Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. You found your home for organic Bible study that's locally sourced and responsibly grown. Today we're looking at, and all this week, Psalm 85 on Daily Dose Radio. Glad you're back. Yesterday we read verses 3 and 4. Today we're going to pick up verses 5 through 7. And in this little piece, in 3 through 7 that I call the dialogue, it's kind of a pronoun dance that's going on here between the people and the Lord. You've turned yourself from your anger. Turn us, O God. Cause thine anger towards us to cease. Wilt thou be angry with us forever? Draw out thine anger to all generations. So the question comes here in verse 5, and you can see the back and forth between your and us, or our, that's going on here in these verses. Okay, so let me read verses 5 through 7. Wilt thou be angry with us forever? Wilt thou draw out thine anger to all generations? Wilt thou not revive us again, that thy people may rejoice in thee? Show us thy mercy, O Lord, and grant us thy salvation. Boy, isn't that beautiful? And ends well, too. Here at 7, we have a natural conclusion to these 5 verses that we've read so far this week, here in 3 through 7. But I want you to notice something. After verse 5, what happens to anger and wrath? You don't have them again. Notice verse 6. Wilt thou not revive us? So there's the your, thou. Will you not revive us? And so the question here is, bring us back to life. You see, the psalmist here is saying, well, you've brought us back to the land, but you've not really brought us back to life. We need a reviving to take place. And the question is, won't you do that? Because he asks there in verse 4, turn us. You see, only God can do the turning work. So he says, are you going to be angry with us forever, for all generations, there in verse 5? Won't you revive us? And he's expecting revival because God has returned them. He's brought them back. But that hasn't done the job that needed to be done. The job that needed to be done was in their hearts. It wasn't just their location or their condition. No, this happens to be something that has to happen on the inside of man, and only God can do that. Revive us again, that thy people, there it is again, your people. Where did we see that before? We saw that in verse 2. You've forgiven the iniquity of your people. Well, he says, let the people rejoice because of reviving, because of returning. Now that word revive means to make alive or to give life. So he's saying we don't have life, only you can give it. Show us thy mercy, O Lord. Now this is why we don't see anger and wrath being mentioned anymore in the psalm. It's mentioned there in 3, twice in 3, wrath and anger. It's mentioned there in 4. It's mentioned in 5. But now after the question of reviving comes up, we have the statement of mercy. Show us your mercy, O Lord. So now we see that God is the owner of the land, the people. He is the keeper of his wrath. He is the one who can revive and give life. He's also the one that shows mercy. Show us thy mercy, O Lord. There's the tetragrammaton again. So we had it beginning in verse 1, very first word. We have it here in verse 8. Let me check and make sure that's the very first word of 1. Nope, second word of verse 1. Well, here in 7, show us thy mercy, O Lord. And then in 8, we have it also what God the Lord will speak. Well, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Grant us thy salvation. So we go back again to the idea of salvation. Turn us, O God of our salvation. Grant us thy salvation. That was in verse 4. And now we have it again here in verse 7. So his anger is past. We're not talking about that anymore. We're talking now about God's mercy. Only God, because of his mercy, can do a reviving work in the hearts of men. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.